What's up, everyone? In this video, we're going to be working with some young Japanese maples, specifically seedlings. All right, well, there's a lot of named, and I should say hundreds of named varieties of Japanese maple. And that's sort of a product of the fact that Japanese maples are naturally genetically variable when you take seedlings and propagate them from various trees. These seedlings are the seed from a named variety, which is Deshojo, but they are not Deshojo because they are not the clonal variety. Most of the time, the seedlings that come from a Japanese maple will be somewhat similar to the parent that they are coming from. So I wouldn't expect a very tiny leaf to come from a parent tree that has a large leaf. So we can kind of select the characteristics that we like out of the seedlings that you get. If you went and picked some seed and sowed it, you can take a look at how large the leaves are, how large the nodes are, the coloration of the leaves in the spring or summer or fall, and such. Also the bark, there's a lot of different variations. So these have already been wired once, and so this one has a lot of movement in the first few inches. Let's take a look at how we can take this tree and adapt it to a couple of different uses. So the curve that's in here, you might think to yourself, well, it looks kind of unnatural, but this is sort of just step one of a long process of creating a good bonsai. And I prefer to not have maples that have a straight first section of their trunk. So you can see that after this was bent, it has created this little shoot here that's sort of escaping, and most likely, because most trees have a tendency to do this, this will eventually take over and become the main trunk if left to its own devices. Now, the size of the finished composition that you want to create is really important to take into account when you're working with young maples like this. In other words, I want to know, do I want to make a 6-inch tree? Do I want to make a 12-inch tree? Or do I want to make a 3-foot tall tree as my finished composition? Each one of those things is going to require slightly different movement in the trunk. If you have a 6-inch tree and it only has one slight bend in it, then you don't have a lot of movement in that 6 inches. Whereas if you have a 36-inch tree with really tight movement at the base, it looks a little bit odd as well. So for this one, I'm going to take this curve that's already in here and actually kind of stretch it out a little bit by adding a piece of wire further up the main shoot here. All right, and with the wire applied, I can now go ahead and bend this. And like I said, before I applied the wire, I actually don't want these turns to be quite this tight because this particular variety is kind of a larger leaf. I want to plan to make a somewhat larger composition. So I'm actually going to kind of straighten these curves out a little bit and then go ahead and continue adding some movement as I go upward through these leaves. So this tree is about a little over a year old. It was started last spring and we're just getting into summer, so it's had 2 springs to shoot out growth and it's looking pretty good. Now you might wonder, why am I just leaving this here? In essence, if this is going to be a large tree, I'm going to need a sacrifice branch down here in order to drive more wood production at the base. So that is the function of this branch for now. Let's grab another one. So as you can see, this one was also wired, but it's sent out 2 strong shoots, and those shoots are obviously both going straight up, and it's going to give up on this little thing here in favor of one or both of those. So if I want to use this as a bonsai, I need to think about what the design is going to be. And I don't know about you, but in the past when I've seen maples do this, it's made me a little bit frustrated because I didn't really understand how to adapt this to a bonsai shape. Say that we want to make a shohin-sized maple out of this, then it's going to need to have a little bit tighter movement maybe in the bottom. You can make a straight trunk shohin maple, but you can also do some really interesting things with a little bit of movement down there. But in order to make a good shohin, we're going to need this portion of the trunk to be relatively large, tapering quickly as it goes up through here. So I'm going to keep this lower branch as a sacrifice, and then I'm going to cut back the second strong branch to just 2 nodes. So there's one node where it comes out of the main stem, or what was the main stem. Then there's another little node right there and another node right here. So now that I've cut that back, it's going to create more growth in those 2 areas. I've already got these other little things, so I'm going to go ahead and put a wire on here. All right, and with the wire applied, I can kind of do some twisting and bending here, hopefully without breaking the trunk. It's still pretty pliable. All right, and I'm not trying to create sharp turns or anything like that. I'm actually just trying to put some good movement in it and kind of create interest so that I have options moving forward. Anytime I'm doing something like this, I'm always kind of thinking about, well, if it goes wrong, you know, what is plan B or plan C? I'm gonna cut these guys back so they're short too. Now, as opposed to the first one where I had a low sacrifice branch that was weak, what I have here is a tree that I'm designing only up to here at this point. So this is my trunk line. This is a sacrifice branch, and that is a sacrifice branch. That's going to give me some faster taper than just having one sacrifice branch here, and I've positioned one on either side of what I'm thinking of as the main trunk. So I can kind of keep this under control while I eventually pot this up into a larger container and allow these 2 branches to run. So just a word of caution as I work on this third one. Working with larger leaf varieties, which I would consider this to be a larger leafed variety, is going to make it difficult to create good ramification in small compositions. So these particular trees are probably better suited to something in the at least 12-inch or taller range, maybe 18 inches to 36 inches being standard large bonsai size. That means that the trunks are going to need to be grown out to larger size to be proportional to what we actually want to see in a good bonsai composition. So this has a pretty strong kink down here at the bottom. I'm going to kind of unkink it like I did the other one, just a little bit. We don't have to go crazy with this because sharp turns can kind of even out over time and become interesting. So I'm not regretting the fact that there's some sharp turns here. I just want to kind of adapt them to a little bit larger scale because this was wired when it was a much younger seedling, and the rest of this growth basically at that time didn't exist. All right, and now if I'm going to actually use this as a large composition, I could probably use this whole section just as the first section of the trunk and continue wiring this upper portion to have some movement as well. Or not. I just broke that right there, so I'll go ahead and cut it off. If you do end up breaking something like that, the tree obviously is going to send out more growth, and then you can use those new branches to extend the trunk line into a larger composition. So 3 examples of bending Acer palmatums to make sort of a shohin size or medium to large size trees depending on your goals. These seedlings, you know, that I started with already had some movement in them, and that makes them interesting to wire a second time. So I'm going to go ahead and set these back out to grow for the rest of this season, then follow this up by doing some detailed root work on them before I pot them up into larger containers to continue growing out the trunks. That wraps up this video about young maples. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.